An unprecedented monster of a storm. The El Reno tornado. On May 31, 2013, a monster was born on the plains of Oklahoma. It wasn't just a tornado. It was a meteorological anomaly, a force of nature so vast and so complex that it redefined what we thought possible. This wasn't merely a storm. It was a phenomenon that stretched an unthinkable 2.6 miles wide, making it the widest tornado ever recorded in history. It moved with a terrifying speed, a shape-shifting behemoth that swallowed everything in its path, leaving behind a legacy of awe, terror, and profound scientific revelation. For days, meteorologists had been sounding the alarm. The conditions were textbook for severe weather: a potent dry line surging eastward, abundant moisture streaming north from the Gulf, and an incredibly unstable atmosphere primed for explosive development. The Storm Prediction Center had issued a rare high-risk outlook, warning of long-track, violent tornadoes. This wasn't just another spring day in Tornado Alley. This was the kind of setup that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned storm chasers. Among them was Dr. Tony Liu, a veteran atmospheric scientist who for 20 years had dedicated his life to understanding these destructive forces. He wasn't a chaser in the traditional sense, but his mobile radar unit, affectionately called the Observer, was positioned strategically west of El Reno, a small city just outside Oklahoma City. His mission was to gather data, to peer into the heart of these storms, hoping to unlock their secrets. But even Tony, with his encyclopedic knowledge, felt an unease that day, a prickle of intuition telling him this might be different. What almost nobody says is this: sometimes, even the most advanced models fail to capture the true scale of what's brewing. It was a classic, beautiful structure at first glance, but beneath its majestic facade, something sinister was taking shape. As it drifted northeast, it quickly consolidated its rotating updraft, or mesocyclone tightening. By 6:03 p.m., west of El Reno, a funnel cloud dipped, then touched down. This was the birth of the El Reno tornado. Tony, monitoring his screens, saw the telltale signature, a rapidly intensifying velocity couplet, indicating strong rotation. He directed the observer to track its movement, his team meticulously recording every data point. The initial reports from chasers converging on the area spoke of a relatively narrow but clearly defined tornado. But that's not all. Within minutes, the storm began to undergo a transformation, an evolution that would soon bewilder and endanger everyone in its vicinity. As it churned across the open fields west of El Reno, it began to expand at an unprecedented rate, not just in width but in complexity. It wasn't a single coherent vortex anymore. Instead, it became a monstrous multi-vortex beast, with smaller, intense circulations spinning within its massive, shrouded parent circulation. Tony watched, his brow furrowed, as the radar imagery became increasingly chaotic. The discrete hook echo that typically signals a strong tornado began to morph, blurring into an immense, low-level circulation. The tornado itself, cloaked in rain and low-hanging clouds, became nearly invisible, a wide, dark wedge that was impossible to distinguish from the surrounding storm. This wasn't random. This was a direct consequence of the storm's incredible energy and its interaction with the environment. The key detail is this: the sheer size and rapid morphological changes made it almost impossible to tell where the deadly core truly was. A critical mass of storm chasers, citizen scientists, and local residents found themselves in the path of a rapidly accelerating, invisible terror. The storm's forward speed, estimated at times to be over 50 miles per hour, combined with its massive width and erratic movement, created a death trap. The most tragic outcome of this unparalleled event was the loss of 3 renowned storm chasers: Tim Samaras, his son Paul Samaras, and their colleague Carl Young. They were veterans, pioneers in deploying probes directly into tornadoes. Their scientific curiosity led them into the heart of the storm, but the El Reno tornado was unlike anything they or anyone else had ever encountered. It suddenly widened, shifted course, and enveloped their vehicle. This isn't random. The storm's rapid expansion and the development of multiple intense subvortices meant that what appeared to be a safe distance one moment became a death zone the next. Their vehicle was swept up, a stark reminder that even with experience and technology, nature holds the ultimate power. And yes, there's a hidden cost to pushing the boundaries of discovery. Let me explain why. As the RFD surged around the tornado, It started to merge with existing circulations and even spawn new ones. These smaller, intense vortices then began to orbit the main circulation, creating a storm-scale boundary that significantly expanded the overall tornadic circulation. Tony's radar data, later analyzed, showed these complex interactions in terrifying detail. The effect was akin to a planetary system, with smaller, deadly moons orbiting a colossal, invisible sun. This defines the experience of trying to understand and survive such a unique, extreme event. While the tornado had largely tracked across open country, minimizing structural damage, the human cost was significant. 8 people lost their lives, including the Samaras team, and dozens more were injured. The sheer terror and confusion induced by the storm's unpredictable nature left a profound scar on the region. Emergency services, already stretched thin by a severe weather outbreak, faced an unprecedented challenge. Rescuers navigated debris-strewn roads, not knowing if another circulation would suddenly materialize from the storm's vast, churning base. The scale of the tornadic circulation itself, reaching an astonishing 2.6 miles wide at its peak, made it impossible to discern a clear path of destruction in the traditional sense. Instead, it was a zone of indiscriminate violence. His team watched radar screens paint a chaotic picture, the traditional hook echo replaced by a sprawling, multi-vortex signature that defied conventional interpretation. At first glance, it seems simple, but it isn't. The sheer speed of the storm's evolution and its monstrous scale and rapid evolution presented an unprecedented challenge. Traditional Doppler radar, designed to detect the classic hook echo of a supercell, struggled to resolve the multiple, rapidly evolving circulations embedded within El Reno's vast rain-wrapped structure. The storm wasn't just big, it was a shapeshifter, a hydra of rotating columns, each capable of producing violent winds. And that changes everything. The standard warning protocols, honed over decades, suddenly felt inadequate against an adversary that defied easy categorization. Forecasters like Thoman found themselves grappling with an almost philosophical dilemma. How do you warn people about a threat that is simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, a diffuse zone of peril rather than a pinpointed path? The sheer breadth of the circulation meant that even if the primary vortex missed a town, a smaller yet still deadly subvortex could devastate it. This wasn't just about identifying a tornado, it was about understanding the entire atmospheric beast it spawned from. The data coming in was a cacophony of conflicting signals, a blizzard of false positives and ambiguous signatures that made real-time decision-making a terrifying gamble. Scientists had long focused on the classic supercell, a rotating thunderstorm with a single dominant mesocyclone that often produced a visible, well-defined funnel. El Reno, however, was a beast of a different stripe, a colossal rain-wrapped multi-vortex tornado that stretched an astonishing 2.6 miles wide at its peak, making it the widest ever recorded. This isn't random. Its sheer scale and the chaotic ballet of its internal dynamics forced meteorologists to confront a brutal truth. Their instruments and methodologies, however advanced, were still playing catch-up with nature's most extreme manifestations. Most people miss this, but it matters. The traditional radar signatures, once reliable indicators of a developing threat, were obscured by the sheer volume of precipitation, creating a black box effect where the most violent processes were happening out of sight, cloaked in a deadly shroud of rain. A brutal truth, instruments playing catch-up, the black box effect, danger unseen. This wasn't a single monolithic funnel. It was a swirling maelstrom composed of multiple, smaller, incredibly intense vortices, each capable of producing devastating damage. These sub-vortices, often invisible within the larger circulation, could veer independently, making the tornado's true path unpredictable even for those directly in its path. Imagine trying to outrun a monster whose limbs move in different directions, each one a potential harbinger of death. The key detail is this: the danger wasn't just where the main funnel was expected to be, but anywhere within the miles-wide expanse of its rotating parent circulation. For forecasters like Thoman, this meant a terrifying expansion of the warning perimeter. No longer could they confidently draw a narrow polygon. The entire broad area under the storm's influence was a potential kill zone. The responsibility weighed heavy, a visceral understanding that every decision, every delayed update, every ambiguous radar interpretation could mean the difference between life and agonizing death for those in harm's way. The stakes were impossibly high, pushing the boundaries of human endurance and scientific certainty. The landscape, once a canvas for their scientific observations, rapidly transformed into a death trap. Rain wrapping, a common phenomenon where heavy precipitation obscures the tornado funnel, became an existential threat. This wasn't just a visual impediment, it was a cloak of invisibility for a monster already defying conventional wisdom. Believe me, this is just the beginning. The chasers, equipped with armored vehicles and sophisticated instruments, found their expertise rendered almost moot by a storm that refused to play by the rules. A master class in chaos, refused to play by rules, expertise rendered moot, death trap landscape. These were individuals who had dedicated their lives to understanding nature's most violent expressions, meticulously cataloging every gust and rotation. Yet, El Reno was a masterclass in unprecedented chaos. The very roads they used for intercepting storms, narrow and often unpaved, became escape routes that were too few, too slow, too vulnerable. Their GPS units, usually a reliable guide, now pulsed with a terrifying urgency, showing their position perilously close to the storm's expanding, unseen perimeter. The roar wasn't just audible, it was a physical presence, vibrating through the chassis of their vehicles, a primal warning of the physics unleashed. The familiar sight of a funnel cloud was gone, replaced by a wall of churning rain and debris, a disorienting, suffocating embrace of wind and water. The ground crews, once focused on data collection, found themselves in a desperate fight for survival, their roles abruptly shifting from observers to potential victims. The contrast between their scientific mission and the raw, visceral terror of the moment was stark, a chilling testament to El Reno's unique brutality. Dashboards lit up with urgent warnings, radio channels crackled with panicked calls, and the very air grew heavy with the smell of ozone and damp earth. Decisions had to be made in fractions of a second, life or death choices dictated by instinct and the fleeting glimpse of a road sign through the deluge. The physics of the storm dictated their options: accelerate, turn, or be consumed. This wasn't random. The rapid-fire expansion meant that escape routes considered safe moments before were now directly in the path of deadly winds, forcing chasers to make impossible calculations about the storm's future trajectory versus their own dwindling options. On one particular stretch of rural highway, several chase teams found themselves converging, a grim constellation of vehicles caught in the storm's widening net. The initial strategy of punching through the rain curtain to get a visual on the funnel, a risky but sometimes necessary tactic for experienced chasers, proved catastrophic. The ground beneath their tires became a treacherous mix of mud and debris. Visibility dropped to zero, and the sheer force of the wind threatened to peel their vehicles from the asphalt. It was a terrifying inversion of their pursuit, where the hunter became the hunted, and the scientific tools that once offered clarity now only highlighted the overwhelming odds. Thank you so much for watching.